We've heard a lot about Jeff Grimes and the scheme being better and the difference it'll make. We got to ask the question, is that hype or is that real? Let's talk schemes. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. We are a week or so from the season. I cannot wait for it. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Football season's around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning for your futures bets now. Thank you for being an everydayer. Thank you for making Locked On one of your first listens every single day. We are an everyday show for your Wisconsin Badgers. We are bringing in Curtis Holland, grandson of Wisconsin Badgers great Lou Holland. We are talking Jeff Grimes, the scheme, pessimism, optimism, and what do you know coming out of fall camp? But Curtis, let's start here. Jeff Grimes, the scheme, we've talked about it a lot. Why are you so excited about this specifically?
Yeah, Jeff Grimes is the scheme I think we always should have evolved to, even when Paul Chryst was still coach. I know we went and got Bobby Ingram, and I think that was, obviously in retrospect, not the best decision. I think that when you look at the evolution of offense, a wide zone scheme is basically the evolved form of the West Coast pro style, which is what Paul Chryst has run and Barry ran all those years. It's basically just the continuing evolution of what our offense has always been. And so just from a pure fundamental perspective, I think that is where we needed to take this team. The other thing I really appreciate about his scheme is it is an NFL scheme. It's a scheme that's been proven. It functions at the highest level. San Francisco is always in the playoffs. They always run deep. You know, I'm a Bears fan, so I got to make this comment. San Francisco always gives the Packers the worst time in the playoffs, right? So, like, that's the kind of thing that I really appreciate about this scheme. It's proven, and it works at the highest level. But the big thing that I really wanted to bring up is this idea of synergy, right? This, I think, coming out of fall camp so far, and many people have made comments of this, I think the big thing is that you see that this type of scheme absolutely fits the personnel we have. It's honestly, it's lined up to best take advantage of the players and the talent that we currently have on the team to allow us, I think, to play our best football.
Any worries for you? So I really liked what I saw from Coach Grimes in this offense in Platteville. Watching practice, it's scheming things up, it's getting people in motion, it's isolating mismatches. Any worries that come week one, there's going to be a learning curve?
So I think there's always going to be a learning curve, but the thing is that works both ways. You know, you have a new quarterback in Miami of Ohio. They have new players. A lot of their really good, talented players that brought them to the MAC championship game last year either graduated or transferred out, right? So they're in the same boat as us. Every team week one is in the same boat trying to figure out what it's doing. You know, very veteran teams, you know, they might have a strong semblance of where they're trying to go with their team for the year. But in terms of, in this particular case, I think that kind of works both ways. And I think it's the opportunity to really iron out a lot of those kinks in the first and second game. I think that overall we have an experienced unit in running different zone concepts of blocking. Some of our starters played for Chris. They understand a lot of gap scheme work and things like that. So we have guys that understand it. I think it's just getting those in-game reps that are always different they're always going to be different than a scrimmage. That'll allow them to sort of sink it in. But again, I think just the structure of the offense itself is designed in a way such that even if it's not absolutely perfectly run 100%, we can still take advantage of the fact the defensive linemen have to go sideways. We can get vertical. We got athletes playing running back who can take advantage of mistakes or misplacement by the defense. We're still running a lot of motion, a lot of pre-snap stuff to get people out of position. You have a senior veteran quarterback in Billy Edwards that can also survey that, see the field, see where the weak matches are, see where the different motions take advantage of the defense and where to direct a play, right? And that, again, that comes with experience. That's one of the things we have at least we have the benefit of this year.
Talking about some of the pieces that he's going to use, one of the pieces he won't be able to use for a little while, Tucker Ashcraft got hurt, was one of the top two tight ends along with Lance Mason. How does that impact this offense to you? Is it as simple as, well, Jackson Akers is going to get more reps, Grant Steck's going to get more reps? Are we going to see more maybe 21 personnel, which is two running backs, one tight end? How do you think this affects what Grimes wants to do this year?
Yeah, I think it does actually affect it in a way. Grimes' offense is more of a set play offense, meaning that they're going to have a lot more substitutions, a lot more formation dependent plays and players that they use in their sub packages on offense, right? You might have a play with 3 tight ends. You might have a play with 4 wide receivers. It just depends on the situation, the circumstance. And then who plays is basically dependent on those formations. So I think you see a lot less 12 personnel in terms of well, at least 12 in the traditional sense where you have 2 tight ends and 1 running back. I think you might see some, 12 personnel where you have a tight end and Jackson Aker, who's a fullback, but, they're going to call it 12 personnel technically. So I think you might see a little bit less of that, but I think you might compensate that with a little bit more, 11 or I guess 21 personnel. Whatever, it's getting confusing, but I think you might compensate for it with that. And I think the thing about playing 11 personnel is, again, that's kind of where we recruited to for the last 2 years. So I think you can sort of take advantage of what we already naturally have on the roster anyway to leverage our plays in those formations a little bit more effectively. And I think that gives guys like Tretch or, maybe a Hilton on a sub, maybe Jayden Ballard, to play against maybe some of the corners that aren't usually the starting top corners for another team. And we might be able to take advantage of some mismatches and matchups in that way.
Yeah, and one thing we saw a little bit was we saw 2 running back sets in Platteville. We saw, Aker being used in a lot of ways, motioning out, being used as fullback, then motioning out into the slot. So I kind of think he'll be fine. I like Tucker Ashcraft. This is not me trying to diminish what he would do or what he was going to do for the scheme. I know he's a player that they were excited about getting out there, but I just think there's enough pieces that they can move around that I don't think it's a massive impact in terms of what Grimes is going to be able to do. Give me 1 or 2 players that you're really excited about with this team and this scheme meshing up.
Yeah, this offense, I'm excited. Well, I'm just going to say this as a whole. I'm excited for all the running backs. I know the other day you had mentioned, who do you think that Dylan Jones runs the most like? When I was watching it, actually, for me, my comp, now this is not qualitative, but in terms of the style that he runs, I think Melvin Gordon runs upright, 1 cut and done, can deliver the power when, he has to, but maybe is a little bit more athletic of a build than just a pure power running back. He's got that long galloping stride. He tries to get to the hole quickly, and he tries to close the distance to the end zone when he's got the ball. So that's who he reminds me of the most from just a skill set perspective. A guy like a Dupree, to me, has kind of got the body of a Corey Clement, but more of the skill set of like a James White. So I think those two are going to complement themselves incredibly well. In fact, one of the things that I thought about was I think this is going to be the closest to our Andy Ludwig offenses, specifically 2013. That we've had in a while. I think that's what this team is going to remind a lot of people of if they're watching it and maybe not, as closely invested with all the coaching changes and the athletes and all that. I think that might be what it brings back. That's kind of, honestly, that's kind of how I see this team performing.
Well, I like that you went running backs. We're going to bring that up later. We're going to talk a little bit more about the running game. That's an interesting comp, Dylan and Melvin. I think people are always hesitant to compare any of the greats to
but that's the thing. Like, putting that on a kid is a lot, but and that's why I said not necessarily qualitative, more in the style of how he runs. He runs the same way that Melvin does. And that, to me, is probably the closest comp to him. Does that mean this is because Melvin? I'm not going to go and say that. He could be, maybe not. I definitely don't think he's going to get 2,500 yards. I don't think anybody's going to do that anytime in the near future with the way these schedules and, how you balance your running game and things like that are set up. But at the same time, I still think that that's kind of the style that he embodies.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting comp. Like, I use Monte, but I can definitely see where you're coming from with Melvin as well. The other part of this, you look at pieces of this offense that I think fit really well with Grimes. Now, this piece wasn't here last year, but a guy like a Jayden Ballard, Grimes is going to use the running game extensively to set up deep play action passing, deep post, deep 9 routes, that kind of stuff. That's Ballard's game to a T. He's a guy that wouldn't fit as well, I think, in Longo's offense as he's going to fit in Grimes' offense because of the way Jeff Grimes is going to use that running game to set up some of these deep shots. And then I think you mentioned Billy Edwards as well. Billy is a guy who, as a mobile quarterback, is going to take advantage of some of this stuff, veteran guy. It just feels like a better fit for a lot of these pieces. I think it's a great point.
Yeah, and the key thing about, and I agree, with Ballard, I think the scout on him was one of the things he struggled with at Ohio State was getting off press man coverage and was winning at the top of his routes. That's kind of where he, had room to improve going into the, spring last year and fall this year. The good thing about an offense like Grimes is it's actually closer to what Chris used to do, in which every play is sort of set. So you don't have to just organically beat your defender like you might have had to do last year under Longo, more of his air raid system. Now you're going to run to a space or you got to time a route, right? And the cool thing about that is the pre-snap motion, having the defense have to pay attention. Where's Jayden Ballard? Where's Vinny Anthony on each play? Either of those guys can take it to the house if they get some space. So the defense has to be constantly aware of what they're doing and where they're going, which, again, if the running game is our primary focus, you start to lose track of that, right? And eventually maybe you run Ballard has to run a crack block and he pops off someone on a play action pass. Next thing you know, he's 10 yards behind the safety, and Billy can hit him that far. So that's kind of where I think that, to your point, we can take advantage of guys like that, because just by their speed alone, you have to pay attention to where they're at all times, but you can't watch everything. And defenses are going to make mistakes. Actually, one of the comments I wanted to make, and I didn't know this until like literally a week ago, when Iowa shifted to wide zone, they were the only team in the conference that ran wide zone. Iowa, their offense went from 15 points per game to 27 points per game in one season. Now, they had a great running back in Caleb Johnson, but they also had him the year before that, right? They had basically Cade McNamara, and then whoever was behind Cade McNamara, and then the guy we played, Sullivan, he was the backup at Northwestern. He couldn't throw it more than 10 yards. He was an option quarterback, right? And they still averaged 27 points per game. Why? Because the scheme works. It's effective. It's sound principles. It gets defenses out of position, right? And so that's why I feel really good about the potential of this team once you integrate all the tools and the veterans and the things that we have at our disposal.
Now, that's a great point with Iowa because, yeah, to your point, that quarterback play was not exactly uplifting that offense. No. We talked complementary football a lot this offseason. Can the Badgers actually pull it off this year? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends at the show over at Rugiet. Listen, guys, if you've heard of Cialis, you've heard of Viagra, maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet is the next generation prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. And listen, that moment might be right after a Jayden Ballard 80-yard post play. That might be the moment. You want to be locked in, ready to go when that moment hits. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. And I love that it's completely online. You're going to be connected with board-certified doctors for more confident and more just a personalized treatment in that moment. Right now, head over to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege. Use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved. Do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturer review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. All right, let's come back to this. Let's talk complementary football, man. We've talked about this a lot this offseason. I've talked about it. I know you and I have talked about it. And the coaching staff has talked about it. Oh, you're on mute right now.
Well, there we go. It's Fickell's favorite word.
Yeah, he loves it, right? And we just got done talking about Grimes. We've talked about the individual pieces. We talked about the running game. How do you see all this working together? Maybe the parts of the whole, or the parts individually are the whole equal. What's that saying? The whole equals more than the sum of the parts.
Mm-hmm. No, I think so. I'm going to start with an analogy here. For those who cook a lot will understand. Do you understand gremolata? Do you know what a gremolata is?
No.
So a gremolata is when you take a piece of garlic, you smash it, you dice it real fine, you take some parsley, and you take some lemon zest, and you mash them together. Now, each of those individually bring good flavors to the mix, but actually when you combine them, the flavor amplifies. It's a much stronger, powerful flavor, often the flavor that you maybe walk into a restaurant, Italian restaurant. It's like kind of those bright, light smells that you go when you go in there. The way I see this offense and this scheme working with this defense is entirely like that, right? And I think we were talking before we got on here. I think A.J. Blazik might be one of, if not the best offensive line coach in the country. And I don't know too many people that would really say, yeah, I don't know, that's not true. I don't think that. No, I think everybody really loves this dude. Yeah. And he had us playing at a high level. If you look at what we were able to do from a pass blocking perspective, what we were able to do with our line last year, for the most part, they stayed healthy. The struggles we had running the ball were entirely due to how we lined up in our scheme. So we were wide split. When you wanted to do a zone handoff into the interior, well, now you're asking a tackle to basically try to cut off an interior guard. It just doesn't work. You can't do it, right? On top of that, you're not going to get any type of vertical momentum because you have to sprint to get to that point as best you can and hope to God that the defensive lineman gets confused and doesn't know what he's supposed to do. Or he's tired from running speed, which we never really ran last year, so it just didn't work, right? Well, now what you're doing is you're running an offense from the inside out. You're building your offense around being able to run the ball, either wide zone or interior duo, power, gap scheme sets, right? And because of that, you're setting the lineman up for success. So now you have a line that's coached by an elite lineman with an offense that's designed for elite linemen, right? That becomes an amplification effect, right? It's not just like, oh, he's good and he's good. That's good on both sides. No, it's those two together now are going to allow for much better plays, much better running lanes, much more opportunity for now, again, on another amplifatory effect, you have high-level athletic running backs who are all individually capable of making big plays at any given time, and you have three of them, Well, now they're set up for more success, right? So again, it becomes an amplification thing. And that, let's say you get Dylan Jones gets a 10-yard run, 12-yard run, or maybe a 6-yard thing, but we can run a sweep behind it. Like that starts to build. That builds confidence. That builds doubt in the defense, right? The misdirections. All these things build together, right? So when Fickell talks about complementary football, he's not just talking about, well, the offense and the defense work together in a better way. He's talking about how all of the individual pieces we brought in, well, maybe not on their own supremely impressive, but as an aggregate, enhance our capabilities as a football team.
Yeah, I love your point about Blazek and meshing with Grimes, because you look at where we were, dude, a couple years ago when Fickell first came in and you had Bicknell and Longo. I don't know if you could have had a worse combination for the offensive line here. It was about as bad as you could have. And now you've gone to who I think is an elite offensive line coach and an offensive coordinator that completely understands what it takes at that level to have success. Those things are going to mesh really well. That running game we talked about, that builds into what Billy's able to do with those deep threats at receiver. And I would just flip it to the other side of the ball, continue talking complementary. Now you have a defense that nominally should be a little better, should force a few more 3-and-outs, which is going to lead to that offense coming back on the field with that running game to continue grinding on teams, which Wisconsin used to do. Wisconsin used to grind on some of these teams. You couldn't do that last year or the year before. I think you're going to see more of that this year, which I think keeps you probably closer to some of these teams that want to be explosive, that want to throw the ball vertically. I think all that meshes together. Offense,
well, it keeps you ahead of the ball, right? I mean, the one thing about Grimes' offense, I've watched as much Kansas film as, I'm probably never going to watch Kansas again after this season. But the one thing you saw with his offense is it never really went backwards. It almost always went forward, and that's sort of his culture. It's that violent offense, that impose your will type of offense. That was what Barry was so famous for, and that works because oftentimes other players, they just don't want to deal with that for 4 quarters. And if the other defense is getting 3-and-outs or not being able to stop it, I'll say this when it comes to complementary on defense. Now you got a Mason Reiger. I think Mason Reiger, to your point, I think you had mentioned this the other day, I think he could be one of, if not the best player we have on defense if he's fully healthy. I don't think that's an exaggeration to say. We haven't seen guys sound like this come out of camp since, Herbig, maybe even getting into some of the guys like the Edwards. And, I mean, I'm not going to go as far as say a Watt, but, he definitely looks like TJ Watt coming off the side for college players. So, now you get a guy, maybe you get him in 3rd and long as opposed to 3rd and short, which is what we saw a lot last year. Well, now they have to play that game, and they're playing into the strength of our experience, which is our secondary, right? Especially if we get Nizer back. So, those are the kinds of things that I think, again, complementary, that enhances our ability to be successful.
Yeah, I think it'll work together. I think, conversely, just again flipping it back to the defensive side, you're also going to stay ahead of the ball a little bit more because you're going to stop the run on 1st and 2nd down with this defensive front, ideally, right? That's the point.
We got a bunch of sawed off tree stumps in the front, right? And that's all we really need. I mean, we don't have anybody who's going to necessarily be, the all-world interior D lineman, pass rusher, Aaron Donald, anything like that. But we do got a bunch of guys that you still got to move them, and they got heart. They want to play hard. They're going to be attacking, right? That's their mentality. That's what they've all talked about. That's what they've all shown so far. Are they perfect? No. Are they the best defensive line in the country? Probably not. But are they going to be a pain in the ass to deal with, play in and play out, especially when you're cycling 6 of them? Absolutely.
I hope so. I mean, because I will say this: they need to show it. They need to show it. There were moments in practice, which I don't put practice is not 100% of what's going to happen in the season. There were moments where I thought the rush defense got gashed a little bit, but even then, you just know they're going to be better because they can rotate 6 guys in and out. They're going to be deeper.
Well, and that also goes to the other element of complementary football. Again, the wide zone is designed to do that. It's designed to get you out of position and then cut off that and then be able to get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 yards, right? That's what Iowa did last year. That's why they were able to run the way they did. But the cool thing about that is that now we're seeing it. We're seeing it every single day. That type of offense, our defense having to learn how to track motion, how to understand the different moves, ways that a football team can attack you, where the offense is designed. Longo always talked about go where the ball or the defense isn't, attack space, all that things. The wide zone offense is designed to do that. That's the whole point, is to create a situation that screws the defense up so you can attack space. That's the point of the offense, right? But now our defense is seeing that every single week. So they're learning, where are we exposed? Where are we weak? Where's the hole in our defense? If I don't read this properly, oh shit, there's going to be a receiver, 10 yards behind me. Like how they're seeing these things. They're seeing it live. On top of that, it's physical. They're in the box, they're hitting, they're getting used to it. It's something I don't think we really did the last few years. We had physical practices, a lot of tackling, but we didn't really have those, interior run type situations in practice. And I think that's going to show a lot for this team moving forward.
It makes me feel good about the running game. I'll tell you that. We'll take one more quick second. Come back. I'm going to tell you a few things we each think we know coming into the season that we've learned through practice. One of mine is Mason Reiger is the best guy on defense if he's healthy. I'm going to get Curtis's coming up next as well. That's coming up next, Locked On Badgers. What do we know coming out of practice? First, a quick second for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel has been a longtime partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Summer's here. You still have baseball, which I love betting on baseball. Every day, different starting pitchers, momentum changes. It's a great time over on FanDuel. You also have golf, soccer, but football's right around the corner too. And FanDuel is your number one sports book to get all your futures, live in-game betting, parlays, teasers, spreads. It's all over there on FanDuel.com. A great betting experience with the best user interface you're going to find. Quick payouts if and when you win. It's all over there on FanDuel.com. And live in-game betting helps you spice up the action even more. Right now, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and you win $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $150 you can use if you win on those bets to spice up your man cave, your sportsdom, whatever it is. FanDuel's the place to do it. Right now, open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. You are not going to regret it. All right, let's get Curtis back in. Listen, things we think we know at this point of the season. Coming into after summer, after fall, I'm going to give you my first one because I teased it. I think I know that if Mason Reiger's healthy, he's the best player on defense.
Yeah, and I haven't had the opportunity to view fall practice at all, so I can't confirm or deny that. But what I will say is this. It's rare you see someone with the heart that Mason Reiger has not be successful. You can go on his Instagram. He tracked every single day of the offseason. He is laser focused on being the best defensive and or outside linebacker he can possibly be. He's a senior. He's got experience. He's got talent. He's demonstrated his ability to get to the quarterback no matter what side he's lined up on in practice. I don't think that's a fault of the offensive line. I think he just might be that good. And I think that it's okay to say, hey, Badger fans, we might have somebody here that can get after a quarterback or two. And so I'm inclined to agree with you on that. I don't see any reason why I would go against that.
I'm going to share the quick story. I think I've shared this with you, and I put it on a show, but not everybody sees every show in the offseason. There was a play in Platteville. They threw a screen pass to Darian Dupree. Darian was kind of weaving in and out. It wasn't a full sprint, but he kind of broke out into open field. Mason Reiger was tracking him down at the 50-yard line. Mason Reiger was in to break up the screenplay in the backfield and then was 50 yards down the field trying to punch the ball out. That doesn't mean he's faster than Darian. Again, Darian was making moves and weaving. My point, though, is that level of effort and intensity is uncommon for a defensive lineman. I think he's going to be special if he's healthy.
You can't teach that. And unfortunately, in the last few months, it feels like Badger fans would be more likely to say, well, he didn't break up the screen pass. It's like, all right, guys, let's focus on the things that we're doing. Well, you don't have to always be negative all the time. I think we can have good things. And so I feel really good about the opportunity that Reiger presents. I was going to say my first thing that I would say that I feel pretty confident on, at least based on what I've heard coming up practice, is that the run game is going to be the focus of this team. And that we're going to emphasize a physical, aggressive, attacking offensive style. And I think that that's exactly what we need to do. That's what that's what our players that we have are geared to perform in the best way.
I love that one because I actually wrote down on my second one, I think the running game is going to be rock solid. So you talked about how it has to be the focal point. We both talked about Dilin Jones, the combination of the offensive line coaching. I think it's going to be with the depth in those three bodies because we didn't even talk about Yakimelli. Yakimelli is number 3. That's an incredibly capable number 3 running back. I'm right there.
Number 3 running back that can run a 4.4. Yeah. Who has that in the country, honestly?
I mean, there's a few teams probably, but they would be probably the Georgias, the Ohio State types. I think the depth in the running back room in those top 3 is pretty elite. I love all 3 of them. So I love that take. Let me give you my next one here. Things I think I know. This is one where we might go back and forth a little bit. I actually think I know the offensive line depth is a problem. That I didn't want to go all positives on this because you're right. We can have good things, but I think we also have some question marks. I think you saw a comment I made, and this isn't necessarily fair, but it almost didn't feel like we had enough depth to make it through Platteville. Watching some of the combinations they were trying to push in and out as maybe Renfro got dinged up. Obviously, we talked about Heinzen. You're trying to figure out where Mandel is. Then Corey had some snapping issues. I think that's a problem, man, and it worries me.
So let me ask you a question. Who was the starting offensive line coming out of Platteville?
So you had Heinzen, Mandel, Renfro, and then you had Brunner and Malman.
So who was projected to be the starting lineman coming out of Platteville?
Well, certainly Haywood.
Platteville, because Haywood's been injured. Obviously, if we had Haywood, it would be a much better situation. But so before we went to Platteville, we projected exactly Heinzen, Brunner, Renfro, Mandel. We hoped Mandel would take the spot, which he did, and then
I thought Brunner actually. To answer your question, and it's a fair question, I thought Brunner would get kicked out. If you go back,
the team, but the coaches didn't think that. That's not what the coaches said. The coaches brought Heinzen in specifically for tackle. So yeah, we might have postulated that, but that's never was the intention. In other words, we entered Platteville with the same projected starting line than we left. Now, this is something that I don't know how many people understand, but the first half of camp is not game prep. It's camp. The point is to get players in different situations, to stress them, to figure out who breaks, when they break. Can I put this guy here and can he be successful? Can I see if this freshman's got some skill, right? That's the point of camp. And guys get injured in camp all the time. So what does the coaching staff do? Well, I know Renfro's going to start. I'm taking him out. I know that probably we need, oh my gosh, what's our backup center right now?
Kadonko.
We need Kadonko. Oh, he hurt his hand? I'm taking him out. They know that. Why? Because they know what they got. They're trying to see what the rest of the players can do. That's why they move people around so much. That's why it seems so discombobulated when you're not necessarily watching every single day or you're not in the coaching rooms. They knew who they wanted to start when they went into camp. And for the most part, it seems like they were confirmed in Mandel, because I think Mandel, I didn't realize he was injured in the fall or in the spring. So him taking the role to me, was a great sign. And so I think that, it looked maybe more chaotic. I don't think it was that chaotic. I think they knew exactly what they were doing and where they wanted these guys to be. I think that, to your point about the depth, when you lose Haywood, that kind of threw everything out of whack. And you're only going to get so much if you go to the portal and try to bring another person in, especially when you have young freshmen who also have a lot of talent. Let's not get it twisted. They might not be ready to play right now, but guys like Ryan Corey, Coverly, Hardy Watts, these guys got talent. So there's a future there. And you're not trying to necessarily upset that apple cart when you know that, okay, if we can keep this line healthy, we still got a backup interior. Kind of wish you had another swing guy. And again, that's where the injury bug did hurt us a little bit, and I agree with that. But I would say that of all the things to be concerned about on this team, that's probably not my highest concern, specifically because we go back to what I said with Grimes and Blazic. On offense, you always are able to dictate what you do with the ball, at least at the start of the play, meaning you don't have to drop back and leave a guy like a Heinzen who maybe is still getting acclimated to Big Ten speed and just leave him on an island and hope he's got it figured out. No, you're going to run away from him. You're going to do play actions. You're going to do boots. You're going to do rollouts because you can control that. So you can take that risk and you can reduce it as much as possible. Is he going to get beat sometimes? Sure. But is Malman going to get beat sometimes? Absolutely. So that's going to happen regardless. It's how can I take control and mitigate as much damage as possible? That's something that Grimes allows us to do that Longo didn't necessarily give us that leeway last year.
Yeah, and listen, I love Blazic, and again, this is not an indictment of him whatsoever. I think he will make the most out of really whatever group of offensive linemen you were to give him. Take him out of the Wisconsin ecosystem. Wherever you put him, I think he's going to get the most out of that group. I do think, again, to your point, I hear your point, but I would also push back a little bit when you say, well, I think they knew what they had, and they were also moving guys around because Ryan Corey was struggling snapping the ball. They wanted him at the number 2 center, and he wasn't snapping well. So they're like, all right, we got to shift him off.
Well, that's why Kadenko's still number 2 center. I mean, you're going to put the players that are going to be.
He wasn't their first choice of the number 2 center. They would rather have him backing up guard, I think. I think my point is there's some younger pieces that maybe not quite as far along as they had hoped. I think that's probably fair. And I also think you saw Haywood go down. They had to go to the portal to find a backup tackle. I think it's just where I would worry some a little bit, right?
Well, but let me ask you this: so here's the thing: you're running up the scholarship limits now. So what group are you reducing by 1 to get another tackle that probably won't play next year, right? Like that's the thing. It's like where are you going on the team to reduce a number to add another tackle that do you actually really need? Which I don't think you do, because I think you can probably cycle a couple guys around. Now it's not ideal. I mean, you would prefer that Benchwall and then I can't remember what's his name is not injured. Or you say, well, was that?
Was you talking about Leighton Nelson?
Yeah. Now you'd prefer those 2 weren't injured, obviously. But then it's like, well, we could just bring on a walk-on. It's like, okay, well then how's that different than the walk-ons we have? You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's where it starts to get to be. You're running into diminishing returns when you start to do that, and you're also showing that you don't have faith in any of the players that you recruited specifically to play these roles, right? Which is not a precedent you want to set. That's why people transfer. So like that's kind of how I look at that. Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal. I mean, we're not going to have a perfect team going into the season. Like if we thought we could deal with every single issue, have everything taken care of, every single box checked, there is no team. I promise you right now, there is 0 teams in college football right now going into their season thinking every single box is checked, we're good, we're guaranteed a title. Not one team. There might be fans that think that. They're wrong, but I'm just telling you, like it's not one team that
they're OSU fans.
Yeah.
No, I hear you on that too. Like, I don't expect Wisconsin to ever have a perfect 3-deep depth chart where if anybody gets hurt, you feel great about the depth coming in, and I never expect that. But I think all I'm saying is it's also all right to, and I know you're not saying it's not, but it's all right to talk about those areas where, yeah, I think that could be an issue. I know we're not perfect, and this is probably why I think we're not perfect, I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I don't think you're wrong. I mean, it could definitely rear its ugly head, midway through the season, someone goes down. We're in a tough bind, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, you got to strap it up. You got to have the people you can, and you got to build the team the best you can. I mean, I look across the rest of the roster. I don't know where we're pulling a scholarship from, or we're pulling guys from, because we need the players that we have, right? We need them for the future, and we need them for now. And I think about, for example, for me, I would say that the thing I'm most concerned with is actually our corner depth. Obviously Nazir, that whole situation is up in the air. Who knows how that's going to go? He comes back, it's going to be much better. But, I think Agard will, by the end of the season, be at the place where we feel incredibly comfortable. But that's after a whole season. I think Hill, I'm curious to see how he pans out. We've had a mixed record on transfer corners. Some have worked well, some haven't, right? So, that'll be interesting. And then behind them is all freshmen. So that's where my concern is, specifically because we play the two best wide receivers in the country this year. And it's not even two best potentially in the last 20 years. It's insane how good these two players are. And so, the fact that we play both of them, with one game in between against Michigan is kind of, or I guess two, are they before or after? I think they're, maybe 2 games in between.
2 games, because you get Michigan, Iowa.
But either, it'll be a contrast. You go from playing Iowa to playing Ohio State's wide receivers. That's a different ball game, But again, I think that's where for us, if I were to say where are we the weakest, that's where I feel like teams can exploit us the most, because I do think we'll be able to manage our tackle situation better. And I also think that, I'm looking through the schedule. There's obviously some really great pass rushers on this schedule, don't get me wrong. But what's the named Abdul Carter or Chase Young you see on the schedule this year? Maybe a couple guys at Oregon, but even then, do you know the Oregon starting off their, edge names? Off the top of my head, I don't. Right. No, so that's kind of where it's I feel like we could probably mitigate that a little bit more.
I know there'll be probably a couple Polynesian kids that are really good, because they always have 1 or 2 of those. Yeah.
I'm not saying that one of these guys that we're playing is going to turn into a Chase Young or something. That absolutely could happen. I'm going through my head, off the top of my head. I can't think of anybody that's that well known that we play this year that we're going to be, having a game plan for.
No, it's great stuff, has always been. And you're not wrong either. The cornerback depth chart is incredibly young, and you're looking at the teams we have to play. And it's not just you mentioned Ohio State, Bama. Oregon's going to test you on the edges. Even without Evan Stewart, they're always going to test you on the edges. You look at some of the other schools, listen, certainly Illinois with Luke Altmaier is at least going to test you in the ability for the passing game. So there's going to be issues here. But man, great stuff as always, Curtis. Thank you for jumping on. Curtis Holland, grandson of Lou Holland, has been on the show a couple times. We always try to get him back.
Also son of Lou Holland Jr. So this is in honor of the 80s. This is actually his 80s jersey. So you see you got the W with the lines there. So yeah, I'm going to have to probably snag one of those jerseys when they drop this year.
Dude, that's phenomenal stuff, man. This will show, again, coming up on the season, bunch of content coming up. I'm sure we'll get Curtis on again if he's willing. Always fun to get Curtis on Wisconsin, and we will definitely talk later.